At the surface, life feels familiar. Fish have bones, animals have lungs. Eyes work the way we expect. The ocean looks like a world we understand, but then you begin to descend. And the deeper you go, the ocean starts removing rules. Not slowly, not symbolically, physically. At just a few meters down, pressure begins to build. Water becomes heavier, denser, more forceful. Every 10 meters adds another atmosphere, another layer of weight pressing inward. At 100 meters, you are already under 11 atmospheres. At 1,000 meters, 100 atmospheres. And by the time you reach the deepest trenches on Earth, the pressure is more than 1,000 times what you feel at the surface. It is the equivalent of an elephant standing on every square centimeter of your body. In that environment, normal biology becomes illegal. Gas-filled lungs collapse. Air-filled cavities become deadly weaknesses. Rigid structures crack. Proteins begin to fold incorrectly. The deep ocean does not tolerate familiar design. Which is why, the deeper you go, the creatures stop looking familiar. They become softer, stranger, almost unfinished. Not because evolution failed, but because evolution had to rewrite everything. Down here, bones are often a liability. Many deep-sea animals avoid gas entirely. No swim bladders, no air-filled cavities. Instead, their bodies become water-rich, gel-like, and flexible, because pressure cannot crush what has no empty space to collapse. A Hadal snailfish, living more than 7,000 meters down, survives by removing the very structures that would kill it. Its body is almost liquid compared to surface fish. Its skeleton is reduced. Its tissues are built to bend rather than resist, and even that is not enough. Because pressure does not only break bones, it attacks chemistry. At extreme depth, proteins can literally crumple. The molecular machinery of life begins to fail. So deep-sea creatures carry chemical armor. Compounds like TMAO are molecules that stabilize proteins under crushing force. Without them, the cells would collapse from the inside. This is the first rule of the deep. Pressure does not just shape the environment, it rewrites biology. And then as you descend further, another rule disappears. Light. At around 200 meters, sunlight begins to fade. Colors drain away. Red vanishes first, then orange, then yellow, until the ocean becomes a blue-gray twilight. And by 1,000 meters, sunlight is gone. Not dim, not weak, gone. A world of permanent night. And yet, life does not stop. Instead, it changes strategy. Because when light disappears, vision becomes optional, or weaponized. In some layers of the deep ocean, 3/4 of species can produce their own light. Bioluminescence is not a rare trick. It is the dominant language. The darkness is filled with flashes, cold blue pulses, green sparks, sudden glowing patterns that exist for seconds and vanish. Light stops being something you see and becomes something you do. Some creatures use it to lure prey, some use it to communicate, some use it to confuse, and some use it to erase themselves. There are squid and fish that project light downward from their bodies, a technique called counter-illumination. They create their own glow to match the faint light above, so predators below cannot see their silhouette. They erase their shadow. An animal hiding by shining. This is the second rule of the deep. When the sun disappears, life becomes its own star. And then comes the next transformation. The deeper you go, the ocean becomes empty, not in space, but in energy. Below the sunlit zone, nothing grows. No plants, no algae, no photosynthesis. Life survives on what falls from above. Fragments, dead plankton, fecal pellets, shredded remains drifting downward like a slow snowfall of decay. Marine snow. A blizzard of leftovers. This means most of the deep sea is starving. And starvation writes itself into anatomy. Creatures develop huge mouths, expandable stomachs, bodies designed for waiting. Because when food appears, you cannot afford to miss it. Some predators look like nightmares, not because they are aggressive, but because they are desperate. And this is only the beginning, because as we descend deeper, the rules do not stop breaking. They accelerate. And the ocean begins producing forms that feel less like animals and more like biological impossibilities. By the time you reach 1,000 meters, sunlight is not fading, it is gone. Above you, the surface still exists, but it might as well be another planet. Down here, the ocean becomes a different system. The water is black, the temperature is near freezing. And the pressure is no longer something you feel, it becomes something that rewrites biology. Every 10 meters adds another atmosphere. At 1,000 meters, you are under more than 100 atmospheres. At 10,000 meters, the pressure reaches over 1,000 atmospheres. It is like having an elephant standing on every square centimeter of your body. Nothing built for air should survive here. And yet life does, but only by changing shape, because pressure makes normal anatomy illegal. Gas-filled spaces collapse. Air pockets become weaknesses. So deep-sea creatures remove them entirely. Many fish here have no swim bladder, no internal balloons, no fragile cavities. Instead, their bodies become dense, or soft, or strangely gelatinous, because water cannot be crushed the way air can. Some animals survive by becoming almost liquid, not because they are weak, but because solidity is dangerous. And even at the molecular level, the deep ocean demands adaptation. Proteins begin to fold incorrectly under pressure. So these creatures fill their cells with compounds like TMAO, a chemical brace that keeps their biology from crumpling inward. This is what depth does. It does not simply hide life, it forces life to become unfamiliar. And as you descend, another rule breaks even more completely because pressure is only the beginning. The next thing to disappear is light. And when light disappears, vision stops being normal. It becomes optional, or it becomes a weapon. Between 200 and 1,000 meters, the last traces of sunlight collapse into darkness. And yet this zone is not empty. It is filled with flashes, cold, artificial stars, because an enormous percentage of animals here make their own light. Bioluminescence is not decoration, it is communication, it is camouflage, it is hunting. Some creatures glow from their bellies, projecting light downward to erase their own shadow. Others use sudden bursts like traps. A blink of blue, a pulse of green, a flash that means something is about to die. And some animals go even further. They become almost invisible. Glass squid, transparent shrimp, bodies so clear you can see organs suspended inside, as if life itself is trying not to be noticed. In this ocean, light is no longer something you live under. It becomes something you manipulate. And as the last natural brightness vanishes, the deeper rule reveals itself. Because in darkness, survival is no longer about seeing, it is about enduring scarcity. Below 1,000 meters, the ocean is not just dark, it is hungry, because almost no food is created here. There are no plants, no algae, no photosynthesis. Everything living at this depth survives on what falls from above. Tiny fragments drifting downward, dead plankton, waste, shredded remains, a slow snowfall of decay, marine snow. But the name is almost too gentle, because it is not enough. It is never enough. And scarcity writes itself directly onto anatomy. In the deep ocean, creatures do not look strange by accident. They look strange because starvation shapes them. Predators grow enormous mouths, not because they are aggressive, but because meals are rare. So when something appears, you must be able to swallow it, no matter the shape. The gulper eel is mostly jaw. The pelican eel is almost a mouth with a body attached, because down here the rule is simple. Food does not come often. So when it does, you cannot afford to miss. Other animals survive by almost stopping. The vampire squid drifts in oxygen minimum zones, where most fish would suffocate. Its metabolism is so slow it can wait, suspended in near stillness, living like a shadow that refuses to waste energy. This is not weakness, it is precision. And then the ocean does something even stranger, because in a world this scarce, evolution cannot choose only one direction. Some creatures become giants, others collapse into miniatures. Giant isopods crawl across the abyss like armored machines. Colossal squid grow into predators the size of buses. Cold temperatures slow decay. Slow growth becomes possible. And gigantism emerges from patience. But elsewhere the opposite happens. Anglerfish males are sometimes no larger than a thumbnail, not because nature made them small, but because finding a mate in darkness is nearly impossible. So when they do, they fuse. The male attaches to the female and slowly dissolves into her bloodstream until he becomes nothing but a permanent reproductive organ, a heartbeat, a supply of sperm, an individual erased. This is not horror, it is adaptation under extreme rules. And those rules continue to deepen, because when sight disappears and energy becomes scarce, senses begin to shift, sound replaces vision, Pressure waves become signals. Life begins to feel vibration instead of light. The ocean becomes a place where perception is built from movement, not from images. And at the deepest levels, the question stops being, why do these animals look like monsters? It becomes something colder. What kind of world forces biology to abandon everything familiar just to keep existing? And when all of these rules stack together, pressure, darkness, scarcity, silence, isolation, a pattern becomes impossible to ignore. The deep ocean is not just a deeper version of the surface. It is a different logic. Down here, biology is not shaped by comfort. It is shaped by constraint. Everything that feels normal above bones, eyes, speed, abundance, even individuality begins to break apart, because depth does not simply hide life. It rewrites what life is allowed to be, and the deeper you go, the clearer it becomes. Strangeness is not an exception. It is the default. The surface is where life looks familiar, only because it is where we evolved. But most of this planet is not surface. Most of Earth is pressure, cold, dark water, a world where sunlight never arrives. And yet, this is where countless organisms have spent millions of years refining themselves into forms that feel almost unreal. A fish designed to be nearly liquid, so pressure cannot crush it. A squid that erases its own shadow with light made from its skin. A predator that survives by waiting, almost motionless because movement is too expensive. A male that stops being an individual because loneliness is more dangerous than fusion. These are not monsters, they are solutions. And that is what makes them unsettling, because they remind us of something simple. Nature is not trying to create what we recognize, it is trying to create what works. And in the deep ocean, what works often looks impossible. There is another layer to this that is even harder to sit with. We still do not know how much life exists down there. We do not have complete maps. We do not have full censuses. Most deep-sea species have been seen only once, or not alive at all. We study them as fragments, as accidents pulled upward, as echoes on sonar screens, because the deep ocean is not just difficult to explore, it is fundamentally beyond human presence. We cannot stay, we cannot breathe, we cannot live inside the pressure long enough to truly understand what is moving through it. So the deep remains what it has always been, a system operating in parallel to our world, vast, continuous, unobserved. And perhaps the most unsettling thought is not that these creatures are strange, but that they are normal for the majority of the planet. The deep sea is not an alien place. It is the Earth's primary environment. We are the anomaly. We are the thin surface layer, the brief exception. And every time we descend, every time the darkness fills with unfamiliar light, every time a shape appears that should not exist, we are reminded of something uncomfortable. The rules we call natural are local. They are shallow. And beyond them, this planet is still full of systems that do not care what feels familiar to us. The deeper we look, the more it becomes clear that normal is not a universal condition. It is only what happens near the surface, where we happen to live. And far below, the ocean continues, quietly manufacturing life that breaks every assumption we have ever made. The deeper we go, the more life looks like it's been rewritten by the environment. Pressure crushes bones, light disappears, energy runs out, and creatures twist themselves into shapes that barely look possible. But there's one rule the deep ocean hasn't broken yet. No matter how strange these animals become, they still share one thing with us. They die. In our next episode, we'll meet the tiny marine organism that seems to have found a loophole. A jellyfish that can grow old, collapse back into childhood, and start its life again over and over. If the deep sea shows us how far you can bend the rules of biology, this creature asks a different question. What if death itself is just another rule you can step around? Subscribe to join that investigation and meet the so-called immortal jellyfish.